9:30 a.m. And so just a reminder, we are starting a brand new series called Tough as Nails. And the whole idea behind the series in like a sentence is that uncertainty is like unavoidable in this season with everything that everybody's walking through, but
Guys, we're so excited you all decided to join us online today. Wherever you are, we're just thankful you're here. It's been a crazy week for a lot of us and a crazy month, right? So this is such a cool opportunity we have to be able to worship together as a CC fam, as guests. If you're just joining us for the first time today, welcome. We're excited to see you guys. Hope you continue to worship with us.
You are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your so we pour out our praise, it's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. Great are you, Lord. You give life, you are love. Bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. And great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, it's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, it's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you only.
We have a chance to declare this morning that God is in control, that He's the one that puts this breath in our lungs. We can shout it out, we can sing it out, so come on.
And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Lord, you're worthy. You're worthy of it all. You're worthy of it all. I pour out my praise. Pour out my praise. You're worthy of it all. You're worthy of it all. I pour out my praise. Pour out my praise. You're worthy of it all. You're worthy of it all. I pour out my praise. Pour out my praise. You're worthy of it all. You're worthy of it all. I pour out my praise. Pour out my praise. You're worthy of it all. You're worthy of it all. I pour out my praise. Pour out my praise. You're worthy of it all. You're worthy of it all. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. Pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you. Oh, it's your breath, so we pour out our praise. Pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you. Only,
God, we love you and we thank you for who you are, for what you do, for walking through us in these times. God, we know you are all powerful. We know you're in control, and no matter how much we try to take control of our situation, God, we know we just need to turn it over to you, to trust you and to love you. And I thank you that we get to gather together around the world today and celebrate you and who you are and all you do for us. In your name, amen.
In the darkness, we were waiting without hope, without light. So from heaven you came running. There was mercy dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe for the souls of all who come to the Father are restored. And the Church of Christ was born, and the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel truth of old shall not dim, shall not fade. By His blood and in His name, in this freedom I am free. For the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Forever to the King of Kings.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us here at Centerpoint Church Online, no matter where you're at. My name is Justin. I'm the Next Gen pastor, and this is my friend Nicole. She is our worship and creative arts
And
pastor.
Just real quick, it is Justin Elam's birthday, so give
It is.
a birthday cake or a balloon or a clap, and then one of our camera guys, Colin Taylor, it's his birthday.
He's over
So
here.
Colin is 15 and Justin's 49.
I am
So
49.
we just want to
This is
say
true.
happy birthday to them, so make sure you put that in the comments.
Hey, real quick, before we move on, Nicole's birthday, your birthday is in a week and a half. Guess which one of us is older? That's always fun to do. But that's not the point of church this morning, man. We're going to have a good time no matter where you're at, how you're joining us. Thanks for being here with us. And what I know is you want more than just simply to watch on a Sunday. You want more than just a TV screen or a phone screen. You want connection. And we want to make that easy for you. So if you would want to get connected with us and fill out a simple nice to meet you kind of e-card, if you will, if you text CC welcome to 94,000, there's going to be a link that we'll send you. Fill out the information in that link. And really, it's just a chance for us to meet you, get connected with you, and help you really find that community, find that connection.
Yeah.
Or if you're here, maybe you came last week for Easter and you're coming back and you have questions about faith, you have questions about church, maybe your experience with church was not the best, or maybe it was really good but you still have questions. We're starting a virtual group called Starting Point. It was April 30th,
Yes,
which is your
my
birthday.
birthday.
So happy birthday,
So it's
April.
really a birthday
right?
party for me. I'm
It's going to be so good. So Starting Point, it's a time for you to ask questions, to find answers, and really just to investigate faith. Again, whether you grew up in church and you're still struggling with stuff, or maybe you're a skeptic, cynic, atheist, and you're like, I really want to investigate this, which we'd love for you to do that with us.
Yeah.
The best way to sign up for that is to text CC START to 94,000.
Just put 94,000 in your phone
All the
and
time.
get ready to text us all sorts of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And by texting that, you got to make sure you follow the link on there. So CC START to 94,000. Follow the link to sign up for Starting Point happening virtually on April 30th.
And you know what? We are just so thankful for those of you who have been partnering with us the past couple of weeks. We have donated over 845 or 95, something.
845
That's
pounds
what
of
it
food.
was. 45 pounds of food between Echo, Amazing Love Ministries, and Portamento of Hope. So you can come on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and drop off your food and your bottles of water. So non-perishable food and bottles of water. And we're delivering that to Echo, Amazing Love, and Portamento of Hope. And what's incredible is I believe Echo got 2,000 pounds of food the other week,
Mm-hmm.
and we supplied over close to half of that, just our church. And that's something that our church is being known for in the community, is our generosity. And so thank you so much. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, you don't even have to get out of your car. We will have volunteers here with masks and gloves. They will come, get it out of your car, and get it all set. So you drop it off Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9 to 1. We also want to thank those of you who joined us in our living room worship on Wednesday, and then also joined us on Velocity at 8 p.m. on Wednesday as we were praying over Jamie and Allison and over the loss of their daughter Avery. And I just have to tell you that as our community came out, a lot of you knew Avery, a lot of you did not know Avery, but you came out strong and we're praying over this family and loving on this family in very tangible ways. And as a result, we've had several of their friends reach out to us via email and social media and just asking for more prayer and comfort and counseling. And so thank you to those of you who are loving on people. You are stepping up and caring for people you don't even know about. And it has been incredible to see how Jesus is using our church in the community. You guys are funding this. You're funding the fact that we're able to broadcast. I'm probably going to steal Justin's thunder here because he was going to talk about Easter in a second. But Justin, how many people did we have view our Easter services last weekend?
Individual viewers, like IP address, it was like 5,000 people.
And that means they basically watched the majority of our service.
Yeah.
We had way more hits than that, but this is 5,000 people who watched the majority of the service.
Yeah.
1,000 of them watched the CC Kids stuff,
CC Kids.
which was incredible.
And that's, we've talked about this. We believe this past weekend,
Yeah.
Easter was going to be our best Easter yet.
Yeah,
and
and it was.
Because a lot of work that we have done, but also all you people inviting people
Yes.
and giving and being part of lives
and
being changed.
serving
is so
in
cool.
really creative ways, but people in 26 different states and all over the world joined in and viewed. And so it was an incredible weekend. But those of you who are giving week in and week out, those of you who are giving maybe monthly, you are supporting what we are doing. We are able to broadcast and have these ministries like Velocity and CC Kids because you are giving. And so if you'd like to give, we wanted to make it as easy as possible. If you text 77977 and you want to text Centerpoint FLVC to 77977, or you can give on the app or online. But we just want to continue to challenge you to give, because this is the way that we are reaching people in our community and making a difference.
Absolutely. And here's the deal. Our impact is actually growing.
Yeah.
We talked about like food that we're giving. What I'd say also, if you're not in the local area, there are most likely there's food banks in your
That's it.
local area you
Yep.
can give to. You can be part of really changing the world through your generosity.
Yeah.
And we saw that happen this last week with Easter. So we had an incredible time. We had a kids experience. We had 3 adult services. Really, it was so much fun to watch and be part of. So
Yeah.
we have a recap video we want you guys to watch, and then we'll get into the first part of this next series called Tough as Nails.
Awesome.
So check out this Easter video.
Love you, fam.
This, my friends, is good. This, my friends, is God. And my God is good. Sing with us.
One day I'm going to right every wrong. And one day every bit of dysfunction and evil and all the things that we see in our world and go, it shouldn't be this way. And Jesus said, it shouldn't be this way. And one day it will bow to me as the resurrected Savior. And I will set up a kingdom that will rule and reign forever. And mark it down. When I do, the expiration date will be up on death. And the expiration date will be up on every virus and every dysfunction and every abuse and every cancer and every Alzheimer's and every bit of depression and every bit of mental illness and whatever you are walking through. And in that moment, I will say once and for all of eternity, paradidomai, hand it over. I have defeated it all. And you can have hope wherever you are. What's up? Welcome to Centerpoint Church. So glad you guys are with us today. Let me give you a couple shout outs real quick. Megan, what is up? Paula, thanks for watching. I've got family all over. Really cool that they're joining us. Dawn, Angela, Janet, Gail, miss you. So many people. You just saw it last week. 26 different states, not sure how many countries, but it's incredible. So just one last time, thank you for inviting. Thank you for being generous. Thank you for what you're doing to contribute to all that God's doing literally around the country. And that doesn't count what's happening via our unfiltered radio program, where tens of thousands of people every day are tuning in. And our reach is just expanding through this season. So cannot say thank you enough. All of you who made decisions last week and are back joining us today, man, I am so glad. So today we're starting a brand new series called Tough as Nails. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to follow me all the way through the end of the series. So I'm going to kind of set it up today, and this is going to last for the next 3 weeks. And there's going to be parts of this, I'll just give you a heads up, are going to be a little bit heavy. But I think that there is no better time to talk about what we're going to talk about than right now. And in fact, I've been planning on this series for a while. Like, when I do a series, I always relate it to a crock pot. Like, I get an idea, and then it just kind of sits there for a long time, and it's all about figuring out when the right time is to preach it. And so literally, I've been thinking about this series for probably a year and a half. And this is not what I planned to do after Easter, and it just felt like the right time. Because here's where all of us are at. This is one of the rare times in my lifetime where I can preach a series like this, and I don't have to have a lot of qualifiers. Like, hey, some of you are here, some of you feel like this, but some of you, like, everything's great right now. I mean, pretty much everybody has some level of shared emotion around uncertainty, anxiety, for some of it's fear, and I know some experience it more than others, but I don't think there's anybody, and I'll just talk to those of you in the United States. I know there's those of you outside the United States watching right now, but there's pretty much nobody that hasn't been impacted at some level by COVID-19. Now, here's the thing about it, as I was thinking about this series. This is one of those moments for most of us where what has always seemed really, really distant has become really near. And what I mean by that is this just feels like one of the things that doesn't happen to us. And I'm talking specifically to those of you who are in the West or you're in the United States. It just feels like something that happens somewhere else. It happens in another country. The impact and the uncertainty on the economy and just fear about our health and all that's surrounding this, like all the craziness of how this has disrupted our life. And we've heard about and we've read about and we've seen things like this, not particularly like this, but like this around the world, but it never seems that close. And now all of a sudden, what is distant or what seems like it generally affects other people has now impacted us. Like in ways that we've never, ever seen. We've never walked through anything like this in our lifetime. Now, here's the good news. If you just talk to Jesus followers of the church, because so many times this gets lost, this is not the first time we have walked through something like this, though, in terms of the generations. I know we think it is. Like, here's what cracks me up about Christians, and I was going to say I'm not making fun, but actually I am making fun, but immediately something like this happens and all of the end of the world memes come out, like all over the place. Like, I think Jesus is coming back tomorrow. It's the end of the world, and and they're quoting verses and pulling stuff out of context in the Old Testament. And maybe Jesus is coming back tomorrow. I hope so. But what cracks me up is stuff like this has been happening for generations, and similar things happen around the world on a fairly regular basis. Our country, 1918, went through something similar with an influenza outbreak. But it's so funny because the first time in the United States in our generation where we have to suffer, we just assume it's the end of the world. Like, well, this has got to be the end of the world. And other people are in other countries right now who are suffering even in different ways, literally suffering and dying for their faith. And you're like, this has been happening for a while. Like, people have been walking through stuff for a while. And I say all that to say not to diminish what we're walking through. And I hope Jesus comes back tomorrow. But we are not the first people to walk through something like this. And the good news is, as you look at the scripture, and this is the point that I wanted to come around this series, is that Jesus gives us so much in terms of how we should respond and how we should not respond. And I just want to talk to us specifically over the next 3 weeks as Jesus followers, but I know that we have a lot of skeptics and cynics joining us, and so here is my upfront hope for you, is that I hope some of you are going to reconsider the whole Jesus thing over the next couple of weeks. And we're inviting you in, and I have so much genuine respect if you're questioning and trying to figure it out, and if you don't know if you have any faith or you lost faith a long time ago. But here's the thing that is true of all of us. I think uncertainty is almost unavoidable at different levels. Like everybody has probably had some moment of fear. The emotion of fear, the emotion of anxiety. Like it's just hard to walk through something like this and not have some level of fear. So I just want to answer the question as followers of Jesus as we start today and then track over the next couple weeks. How should we respond? Like how should we walk through this? How should we react to all of that uncertainty, potentially all of that fear, and all of that anxiety? And I think to answer that question, you got to go all the way back to the beginning. And I don't mean like the beginning of time. I mean like the beginning of the Jesus movement when all of this gets launched. And some of this is so familiar that we become kind of inoculated to it. Like we just become so familiar that it doesn't have any power. But I think this is the time to reflect on some things that we haven't reflected on in a while. Because I think this is the moment where some stuff that we've read for a long time may have more power than it's ever had before. And I'm just telling you, as you go back to the very beginning of how the Jesus movement started, my warning is this. We may seem a little weak in comparison. Like we may seem a little soft in comparison. Again, not that what we're walking through isn't legit, but here's what you have to understand. With all that we're walking through right now, you've got to consider how all of this started and the event that set the standard for the whole Jesus movement. Like what you have to consider as a follower of Jesus is that the epicenter of our faith is a founder that was betrayed by his best friend, and then ultimately he was unjustly arrested, and then he was illegally tried and convicted, and this whole mock it just was ridiculous, and then lied about him again and again and again, and then ultimately he was handed over for maximum punishment so they could make an example out of him even though he had done nothing wrong, and then ultimately they bribed the judge, whose name was Pilate, and the jury, and handed him over to be executed. Like that's how our whole movement got started. That is really the opening lines of the weekend that was going to launch this thing that now 2,000 years later, we're still gathering in Jesus' name. And this literally was the marching orders and the standard for everything that would come behind it. That's who we follow. And Mark, when he's writing about it, writes in Mark 15:15, and again, I know we're familiar with some of these verses, but Mark, who mainly interviewed Peter, wrote this, that wanting to satisfy the crowd. Like, think about that for a second. The reason this happened is because they wanted to satisfy the crowd. Because they wanted to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released this guy who'd become infamous and notorious, Barabbas, to them. And they had Jesus flogged. And again, I know, like we've heard that so many times, and we've heard that word even so many times. If I were to actually in detail describe to you what that actually looked like in the first century, a lot of you would have to change the channel, or you'd have to just stop watching, because it was so horrific that we can't even imagine what they saw, what they smelt, what they felt, what they heard when something like this took place. And in order to satisfy the crowd at the very beginning of our movement, they took our founder and leader and they had him flogged. And generally what that looked like was a whip of about 6 to 8 feet, long leather strips on a short handle. And they would tie up somebody who was being executed and flogged first. They would tie their arms up high so that they could inflict the maximum amount of pain. And then 2 soldiers would grab that whip that was generally lined with stone and rock and steel, and they would begin to rip the flesh off of the back of the person that they were flogging. And there was our founder and our leader, and Mark records all of it. And it says that after this event, Pilate ultimately took Jesus to the Praetorium, which was like Pilate's headquarters, and Matthew sits down and he writes his account, and Matthew was there. Like Matthew saw a lot of this, and Matthew says in Matthew 27:28 that they stripped Jesus and they put a scarlet robe on him, and then they twisted together a crown of thorns that we've romanticized, and we make decorations on tables on top of linens. They thrust a crown of thorns to mock him into his head. And then they put a staff in his right hand. And then they knelt in front of him and they just started to mock him. Hail, King of the Jews. And then verse 30, they spit on him, they took the staff, they struck him on the head again and again and again and again. And then they took him away to be crucified. Now here's the thing. The Romans did not invent crucifixion and torture, but they did perfect it. In fact, the Romans went to unbelievable lengths to figure out how they could squeeze out the maximum amount of torture and the maximum amount of time so that somebody would really suffer. And so they made sure that they designed it in such a way that death was the ultimate goal, but they didn't want to get there too soon. Because they wanted to make an example out of every single individual, every single outlaw who was ultimately convicted, tried, and executed, and in this case, unjustly. They wanted to make an example so that every single individual would fear Rome. They would fear ever messing with the Roman Empire. And in fact, if you were a little Jewish boy or girl, this was just the reality of your growing up, you would literally, as a toddler into elementary age, you would watch rotting corpses on Roman crosses. And so they took Jesus to be crucified under the Roman crucifixion that had been perfected, and you know some of the details. Again, like you've heard this so many times. But they took spikes, and they jammed them between two bones in the wrists, and they took one spike into his feet. And so there would be 3 spikes. The feet would be together, and they designed it in such a way that they would have to thrust up onto those spikes in order to get breath, because generally the way that they died on the cross was of asphyxiation, where they just couldn't breathe. And so they would be there, and they would lift themselves up with incredible agony, incredible torture, get a breath, and then hoist themselves back down, and then they would do it all again. And the cross, generally, we have these ideas because, again, the pictures that we've seen, that the cross is high and lifted up and everybody's looking up to it. That's not how a Roman cross was. It was literally their feet were inches off the ground. And the cross would be designed at face level so that everybody who was standing around the cross, because, again, the goal was torture, the goal was humiliation, and the goal was death. And so everybody who saw someone being executed, they could stare them face to face, eyeball to eyeball, in order to mock and humiliate and degrade them. And there Jesus is, the founder and the leader of the Jesus movement, on a cross a few inches from the ground with spikes between his bones, about to suffocate, and they're eyeball to eyeball, throwing insults, humiliating him and degrading him. And then Matthew says it this way, that as he's bleeding to death and grasping for air and they're mocking him, those who passed by in Matthew 27:39 hurled insults at him and shook their heads, saying, "You're going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days. Save yourself. Come down from the cross if you really are the Son of God. Like, you saved others, but he can't save himself." And into verse 42, he's the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross and we will believe in him. And it happened hour after hour after hour. Now here's the thing that you just have to consider. Jesus did not get caught somehow fleeing to Egypt. Jesus didn't get run down because he was on his way to En-Gedi to hide out in the place that David ultimately hid out when he was running from Saul. He didn't get caught as he was trying to somehow get to a port city and run away. We're talking about our leader and our founder, the person who initiated and started the whole movement, rode into Jerusalem on Main Street in broad daylight, knowing that they were looking for him, wanted to arrest him, and wanted to execute him. They didn't find him trying to flee to some faraway country. They found him as he rode into Jerusalem and looked them in the eye, knowing exactly what they wanted to do to him. Now, here's the thing. Here's where I think part of the problem lies, is that every movie you have ever watched has gotten it wrong. Basically, every picture, and I'm not being critical, like, it's hard to get it, so it's not their ultimate responsibility. They got to get it right. But most of the pictures and the films that you've seen, they just got it wrong. In fact, I think this picture is going to show up. This is generally what you see when you see a picture of Jesus? Are you seeing it? By the way, in the West, I know this will keep you up at night. He wasn't white, but like generally, this is the picture of Jesus. And I just want to tell you, like, this Jesus wouldn't have done any of those things. This Jesus wouldn't have threatened anybody. I'm not sure anybody would follow this guy. This is not the picture that you get as you read the New Testament. I'm just telling you. Because you look at the New Testament, you read the New Testament, I know like the other pictures that I almost included were like petting a sheep and, you know, very like soft-spoken, feathered hair Jesus. Like it just doesn't give you the picture of the fact that Jesus was the ultimate disruptive force coming into humanity. Like think about Jesus starting his ministry, and he never talked to the people they thought that he should talk to. He constantly confronted the religious leaders to their face. He constantly walked toward danger. He walked into the temple, and rather than take his rightful place at the table with the religious leaders, he started flipping their tables over. And then literally single-handedly, he drove everybody out of the temple. Because the religious system had moved to a place where they placed profit over people. And Jesus, who was the ultimate disruptive force, who over and over again predicted, hey, eventually I'm going to dismantle your whole religious system and introduce something brand new. And he goes into the temple and he drives everybody out of the temple. And here's what I love as you read that interaction. They don't ask who this is. The question that they ask is, by what authority do you do this? Meaning, everywhere Jesus went, there was authority. There was strength. In fact, they would listen to him teach, and in their words in the New Testament, they would say, nobody teaches with the authority that this man teaches with. And when Jesus walked into the temple, they didn't ask, who are you? They asked, where did you get this authority from? Because even his staunchest enemies knew that there was something different about him. And you just need to understand, because I think we so easily lose this, that Jesus spoke, Jesus acted, Jesus led, Jesus walked with unbelievable authority, and he really was the boldest leader you can imagine. He was bold, he was fearless, he was braver than hell, and literally he turned out to be as tough as nails. And Luke records it that ultimately that Jesus, the man with that authority, with all that he did, says to me, says to you, says to everybody who's come to that moment where they've placed their faith and trust in Jesus, he says to you in light of all of that, follow me. Follow me. And in fact, Luke writes that this is what Jesus summarized this as looking like in Luke 9:23. And again, like this verse doesn't always mean a lot to us, but one day Jesus was with his guys and he says this, whoever wants to be my disciple needs to deny themselves. And that may mean different things in a different context, but in our context, it's, hey, there's going to be a moment where the reality of your life and what you're walking through in your faith and how all of that intersects together, there is going to be a moment where you are going to have to deny you. You're going to have to deny your relentless effort to control everything and submit to the fact that you have no control. There's going to be a moment where you have to deny yourself and deny your desire for self-preservation and realize that there are moments that your faith is going to demand that you put you second. And it's going to demand that you give up all of your control. And it's going to demand that you deny yourself of trying to obtain all of the certainty for your future. And in that moment, you will be called to walk by faith when you cannot see where you are going. And Jesus says, if you want to follow me, if you're my disciple, if you're my follower, there's going to be a moment where you have to deny yourself and deny what you want and deny your comfort and take up what honestly has simply become jewelry for most of us and really lame artifacts that sit on shelves and overplayed ornaments in churches that are so routine and mundane that we look at them and we feel nothing. But to everybody in the first century and Jesus' initial followers, when they were listening to Jesus in this moment, they got the impact of what Jesus was saying. Hey, listen, if you want to follow me, there's going to be a moment where you got to deny yourself and you got to take up your cross and you have to follow me. You have to follow me when it feels safe. You have to follow me when you're benefiting from it. You have to follow me when you're walking out of comfortable services at 72 degrees, and the marriage series was great, and I got a lot out of that, and I'm going to go apply that. And then you go to your job, and you're complaining because your mouse doesn't work, but like you're living a pretty comfortable life, and you're going to need to follow me and deny yourself in those moments. But then there's going to come a time where you're going to need to deny me, or you're going to need to follow me and deny yourself when it doesn't feel safe, when it doesn't benefit you, when there's very little certainty and you don't know what's ahead. And come on, Jesus knew. Like Jesus knew the propensity in every single heart for security, for self-preservation, for safety. I mean, that's in everybody. We were created for that. We were created to pursue that. But Jesus in this moment is going, listen, if you want to know how to respond when things get uncertain, watch what I did. If you want to know how to respond when you don't know what is next or when there is something to be afraid of, I want you to watch me. I want you to do what I did. I want you to respond the way that I responded. I want you to follow me. And Jesus said it this way. Matthew, again, who was close with Jesus, who spent a lot of time, Matthew recorded it that Jesus said it like this: do not be afraid of those who can only kill your body. We looked at this several weeks ago. Hey, Jesus is like, don't be afraid of the one or the person or the thing, whatever it is, that can only kill your body. Don't be afraid of what can only take your body, only kill your body, only destroy your body, but instead cannot kill the soul. And rather, end of verse 28, be afraid. There is a greater fear. Be afraid of the one who can destroy both your soul and your body in hell. And Jesus' whole point was just this: I know you're going to be afraid. I know you're going to feel the emotion of fear. I know you're going to feel anxiety. I know there's going to be uncertainty. And he's talking to a group of guys that were going to experience it in ways that we can't even imagine. Like Jesus knew the world was scary. Jesus knew the world was messed up better than anybody. It's not what he designed. Sin-infested planet Earth was not the Garden of Eden. And ultimately, God wants to return us to the Garden of Eden. And so this is not the way it's supposed to be. And he knew that we would be tempted to play it safe. He knew that we would be tempted to live in fear. And in this moment, Jesus is going, listen, I just want to reframe things for you. There is a greater fear. And if you are going to be in awe of anything, when that fear comes, when that anxiety comes, when uncertainty begins to play you, just remember this one fact. There is something that should lead you to a place to have greater awe and greater fear, because there is someone who has more power and control than just being able to control or harm your body, but literally has power and control over your soul. And then Jesus followed it up with what we looked at several weeks ago, and I'm just going to real quick read these verses, but the ultimate object lesson where Jesus is on the water and all of his disciples are scared out of their mind because they're in the middle of a storm, and that took a lot because these guys had been in storm after storm after storm. They were professional fishermen. There is nothing they hadn't seen. And yet they're in the midst of a storm that was unlike any storm that they had ever experienced before. And you know the story, right? Jesus is in the bottom of the boat sleeping. He's got a wool blanket on. He's out. And I don't know if he's really out, or I don't know if he's like, one eye is open. He's like, dude, I'm setting you guys up. But there Jesus is sleeping, and they're terrified, and they're panicking. And in Matthew 8:26, again, Matthew records the story. Jesus replied to these guys in the midst of all their panic, hey, you guys, you have so little faith. Why are you so afraid? And the answer is obvious to them. We're afraid because there's everything in the world to be afraid of right now. Like, we may lose our life, and in this moment, Jesus is like, do you guys not remember what I told you? Don't be afraid of what can only harm your body, but has no power and no ability to touch your soul, that has no ability to control your destiny, has no ability to control your future. Man, guys, don't be afraid of anything or anyone who can only harm you physically, but cannot touch, cannot alter, cannot do anything to your soul. And I think in this moment, he's saying to all these guys, listen, you have so much faith when things are great. You have so much faith when I'm feeding 5,000 people. You have so much faith when I'm touching blind people on the way into the temple. It's so easy in that moment. Now it's the moment where I want you to follow me and walk by faith when it's not easy and you're not certain. And so then, so powerful, he got up and he rebuked the wind and the waves, told them to back up. And it was completely calm. And the men, this is an understatement, were amazed and asked, this is the greatest question, what kind of man is this? That he has authority even over the wind and the waves. And we looked at this a few weeks ago, but Mark includes the original Greek in the noun verb form that literally means that they feared in this moment a great fear. That their latter fear overwhelmed their former fear. That in this moment, their fear changed. And suddenly, they are not afraid of the storm any longer. They're afraid of the one that has the power to control the storm. And Jesus in this moment is punctuating the point. Hey guys, why are you afraid of what can only harm the body but cannot control the wind and the waves and the world and systems and governments and people and diseases and viruses and death and your own soul? And in this moment, Jesus is basically saying, listen, guys, if you're going to be afraid, fear God. If you're going to be afraid, not fear like God's after you, the awe and reverence you are over, you are in control of, and you have everything in your hand. And he's reframing everything for the guys in this moment to go, listen, don't be afraid of what can only touch your body. And if you are going to be afraid of anything in those moments where anxiety and uncertainty want to overwhelm you, you got to redirect and you got to refocus and fear the one who has all power. If you are going to be afraid, fear me, fear God. And so Jesus says, in the meantime, as you're walking this journey as part of my movement, the invitation to you is follow me. Follow me. Follow your leader. Follow your founder. Follow the one who is at the epicenter of this whole movement. And I think he says to us, listen, uncertainty and the emotion of uncertainty and the emotion of fear and the emotion of anxiety, because those are just emotions that you feel. Uncertainty is unavoidable. You have no control over that. But here's what Jesus taught, that living your life in fear is optional. Living your life handcuffed and imprisoned and huddled up and self-preserving in fear and anxiety and as the result of uncertainty is optional. And to Jesus' followers, he would say, listen, I want you to refuse to be controlled by, intimidated by, and influenced by fear. And you do have power. And if you're a follower of Jesus, you just need to go back to the roots of your faith. And when the night shift starts working, like the enemy always works the night shift, where he starts whispering in your ear about all of the inevitabilities or the uncertainty of the future. And Jesus is like, you need to shut it down in that moment to go, there is something to be afraid of. I do feel fear. I do feel anxiety. Yes, there are things that are uncertain about my future, but I am not going to fear what can only touch the body but cannot touch my soul. And there is one that is greater than, bigger than, and has authority over all things. And in this moment, I am redirecting my emotions to the one who controls all things and to Jesus, who says to me in the midst of uncertainty, I want you to respond the way that I have responded. Follow me. Shut down the voices of fear. Uncertainty is unavoidable, but Jesus taught that fear is optional. And think about this, because sometimes we just need to be reminded that is our story. That's the story of the Jesus movement. That's the story of the guy that wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. A guy by the name of Paul, who literally is beaten almost to death. He's left for dead in the New Testament. It's recorded in Acts. He's about to lose his life. His executioners leave him on the road ultimately for the animals to just tear his flesh apart. And after getting stoned almost to death, Paul eventually gets back up. And he doesn't flee to some faraway place to go, I put in my time. That was a close call. I'm done. Instead, Paul went right back to preaching. And he began to go into villages and cities against shipwreck and false accusation and persecution and over and over and over again, enduring things that we can't even imagine. And then toward the end of his life in Acts 21, it records that, come on, these are the guys on whom shoulders we stand that led out this movement under the example of Jesus. And Paul in Acts 21 is going to go back to Jerusalem. And all of those in the churches know that if Paul goes back to Jerusalem, it's not going to end well. They're going to take his life. He's going to be handed over to Nero. He's going to be tried by Rome. He's going to be executed, and it's so powerful. In Acts chapter 21, Paul looks at those people, and all of them with tears in their eyes, and Paul says to them, I will never see your face again. But I've been called to this. And Jesus has given me a mission, and so I got to go. And he goes to Jerusalem, and he's tried by Nero. And he's ultimately taken out, probably under the cover of early morning darkness, and he's executed. But in between that time, he's in prison writing you letters. And little did they know in that moment, because in those moments in the first century, Zeus and Jupiter were inspiring people to go into Colosseums and kill. This was the moment, after following the example of Jesus, that Jesus followers were willing and inspired to go into those same Colosseums and die. Because they knew that there was one who had control over their soul, and they did not need to be afraid over those who simply control the body. And 2,000 years later, there is no Roman Empire, but the writings of Paul are all over the world, have dominated the globe, and have completely changed the West, because he took a Jesus example and invitation to follow him even when there was something to be afraid of. That's our story. That's why we're here. That's the story of Christianity. And come on, first century Christians who literally were, this isn't folklore, were fed to animals because they wouldn't bow to Caesar. And it's so interesting because one of the documents that has survived antiquity, that it literally by just a pagan doctor who was there in the Colosseums, who would examine bodies, because Rome had this practice that you could not examine a dead body, it had to immediately go to burial. So they would examine dying bodies in the middle of the Colosseum. And this doctor wrote, and his writings survived, that during this time where Christians were fearless, they were bold, it didn't even seem like they were afraid of death. He wrote this as he examined bodies in the Colosseums. He said, for fearlessness of death, and the hereafter is something that we witness in them every day. And then sociologist Rodney Stark, I don't know if you know the story of how we got started, says that the primary reason for the spread of the Jesus movement was the way that followers in the first century responded to the sick without fear. In fact, in AD 165, there was an epidemic that broke out to where every pagan priest in all of the villages just cut and run. People led and fled as quickly as they could, because Zeus and Jupiter and the gods, they didn't inform compassion. That wasn't known among the gods. They would literally leave sick and dying people on the roads. And it was the Jesus followers that would go into these villages at the risk of their life and nurse people back to health. And later on, Tertullian wrote this, that compassion and fearlessness became the brand of the new movement, even among its opponents, that they didn't believe it, but they couldn't deny it. They were more compassionate and they were more fearless than anyone they had ever seen. And there's only one reason for that, because they served a man who walked into Jerusalem with his face set toward Jerusalem, knowing all that he would endure. And then he told them, hey, in the midst of uncertainty, do not be afraid of what can only touch the body but cannot touch your soul. Follow me. Come on. Every time you pick up an English Bible, or you're looking at your English Bible on your phone right now, like it was translated into English by a guy by the name of William Tyndale that ultimately was considered a fugitive, was ultimately arrested, was ultimately strangled, and then was burned at the stake. Like that's how you got the translation of your English Bible. And then 2 years after that incident, King Henry declared it the official Bible of all of England. And my whole point is just this. We serve a Savior that in the midst of unbelievable uncertainty, unbelievable fear, unbelievable, his disciples going, we don't know what's going to happen next, did not shy away, did not run away, but entered into suffering, entered into pain, entered into all of it and said, listen, I'm setting an example for you. This is the epicenter of this new movement called Christianity, to be a follower of Jesus. And there's going to become a moment where you're probably not going to have to do any of those things, but you will have to deny yourself. You will have to take up a cross and you will have to follow me. And in that moment of uncertainty and in that moment of fear and in that moment of suddenly it doesn't benefit you, but suddenly you have to walk by faith. It's in that moment that you're closest to me. You are most like me. And it's in that moment that you join a chorus of people throughout all of the generations that knew this was the story of following Jesus. We are not home yet, but there is somebody who controls our home and controls our destiny and controls our soul. And he says to us, you have nothing to be afraid of, because the only thing that anything or anybody can do is touch your body. They cannot hinder or touch your soul. Follow me. Live without fear. This is the epicenter of what it means to be a part of my movement and my ecclesia, church. So I just want to end with these questions. I know this is super heavy, but I think this is the moment to teach this more than any other moment. And rather than me just end with a bunch of inspiration, lead us back, because so many of us forget history and so many of us get into a moment where we think we're the only ones who's walked through anything like this, and suddenly the world is going to end, where maybe this is actually the moment of unbelievable opportunity where we get the privilege to follow when it doesn't benefit us, or follow when there's a little bit of uncertainty, and follow when there's actually something to fear, and follow when we get the privilege and the responsibility and the stewardship to actually walk by faith. And so the questions are just this, and I don't know the answer to these questions, but I think you got to consider them. Is our version of Christianity, is it worth that? Like, is our version of Christianity worth that? Meaning, the way we are living and the way that we are walking through uncertainty, the way that we are confronting fear and confronting anxiety, is our version of Christianity. Is it worth that? Let me ask it a different way. Is the way that we live right now, is the way that we live, let's just get real specific, through what we're walking through with COVID-19, and I lost my job, and all of that is a big deal, and there is fear, and there is uncertainty, and some have experienced unbelievable trauma. But is the way that we live right now through this, is it worth the price that they paid? Is the way that we live, is the way that we walk through uncertainty in this season, is it worth the price that they paid? And come on, I say this as graciously as I can, but would Peter and Mary and Paul, would they look at us and go, you're afraid of what? You're afraid of what? Hey, I get it. Uncertainty is unavoidable. It's not optional. You have no control over it. You do have control over fear. And you just need to know whether you believe it right now or not, or you feel like it is unattainable right now in the moment. I get that, I understand that. But you just need to know, if you're a follower of Jesus, this is what Jesus taught. This is the foundation of our faith. I know that it's in some ways not that popular and not that much talked about. It's easier to just preach messages of, if you just believe enough and have enough faith, everything's going to work out. The only problem with that message, it tends to only work in the West. Jesus brought a message for all of the globe in all generations that work when things are good and work when things are not good. And the message of Jesus and following Jesus is not opposed to sometimes walking through suffering and uncertainty, but we can follow fearlessly anyway. And so Jesus says to us, Uncertainty is unavoidable. The feelings of fear are unavoidable. But living in fear is optional. And you in this moment maybe have been given a privilege that you have never been given in your life before, and that is to follow Jesus in extraordinary uncertainty. And I think he would say to us, don't waste it. I mean, just so you know, first century church, the reason that you're here 2,000 years later is because there was a group of people that were branded, even among their opponents, for fearlessness and compassion. So Jesus says, take up your cross, deny you, and follow me. In the midst of uncertainty, step out in faith anyway. In the midst of not knowing what's next, give generously, financially anyway. In the midst of not knowing where you're going to go on the other side of this, pray believing and pray with faith anyway. When you're tempted to self-preserve and protect and think primarily about you, reach out anyway. Follow me. And when the voices of fear and the voices of anxiety, and when the enemy starts working the night shift in your life to speak and to whisper things that are contrary to the promises that he's made, you need to look up and you need to declare maybe out loud, I'm a follower of Jesus. I will not be intimidated by, influenced by, or imprisoned by the voices of fear and uncertainty any longer. I serve a risen Savior, and there is nothing or nobody that can do anything to the thing that matters the most, and that is controlling my soul and controlling my destiny. And so, Jesus, I'm following you. I'm following a man who rode into Jerusalem, and he embraced death on my behalf. And then he conquered death on behalf of the world. And so he says to you, to us, follow me. And I get it. I know that's a lot. And I just want to encourage you as we end this message, you need to tune in next week. So I cannot plead with you enough to track with us. But I just want to end with that no matter where you are. And I just want to invite you to pray if you're watching a living room, in a kitchen, or somewhere around the country in this moment. I think Jesus' invitation right now is not to not feel what you feel. You can bring all those emotions and all of those feelings. But I think all of us need to be reminded of where we're coming from and what we're a part of and the rhythm of what this movement looks like. And so would you, wherever you're at, would you just pray with me in this moment? And you can bow your head, you can close your eyes. You don't have to do that, but wherever you're at, would you just pray with me? And I want to specifically right now in this moment talk to those who are followers of Jesus. And what that means is you've come to the place to go, Jesus, I believe that you died on the cross for all of my sin. I believe that 3 days later you rose again. And I've placed my faith and trust in you to forgive me and to save me, to become a son or a daughter of God. So right now, let me just pray for you in this moment. Lord, I just pray, God, just for your almost physical presence to be felt and experienced by those who are walking through so much fear, so much uncertainty, so much unknown. And Lord, I pray that they wouldn't deny what they feel. They wouldn't deny what they've walked through. They wouldn't deny the pain. And this week, we've walked with so many people just in the course of these few days who are walking through all kind of tragedy. And so Lord, I pray that they would embrace that. They would own it. They wouldn't try to deny it. But God, I pray even this moment for hundreds, maybe thousands of followers of Jesus, that you would just lift our heads up, that you would renew our perspective, that you would help us maybe to look back a little bit before we look forward and realize that in a lot of ways we are in a unique position right now, in a unique moment. But it is not unique in terms of all of human history, and it is not unique in terms of our story as followers of Jesus. And so, Lord, I don't know how this will be received by everybody, but there's some that are leaning in to receive it right now in this moment. And Lord, I just want to pray for those of us who, Lord, want to see you move through this, that we would embrace this opportunity as a stewardship to grow in faith, to live in faith when there is something to fear, to walk and follow you in uncertainty when it's not benefiting us maybe the way it has in the past, or it's not quite as easy. And Lord, I pray for some of us this would be the moment that we understand that verse in a way that we've never understood it before, that Jesus is inviting us to, in some things in our life right now where like we've just resisted, that instead we're going to give up ourselves and deny ourselves and give up some of our control and take up our cross and follow you, because you have promised to be with us every step of the way. And Lord, lastly, I just pray for some of us, there would be such a movement of the Spirit of God in us right now to just speak over our lives. The reality of the fact that there is something to fear, but there is nothing or nobody that can impact what matters most to us and can control our destiny. And if we're going to be afraid, God, we're going to fear you. We're going to be in awe of you. We're going to have reverence of you. We're going to lean into the one who has control over all of the world, our soul, our destiny. And Lord, I just want to pray for those right now that have never placed their faith and trust in you, and I just want to give them that opportunity. So if you're listening right now and you've never begun a relationship with Jesus and you're wanting to know what does it mean to follow Jesus, it all starts right here. It all starts with a decision. And Jesus said, whoever calls upon the name of the Lord will be saved. And so you can just pray this after me. It's not the prayer that saves you, but your declaration of faith. So right where you're at, if you want to begin to follow Jesus, the invitation is this, just to pray, Jesus, I believe that you're God. I believe that you died on the cross for my sin, and I believe that you rose again. And right now, I'm asking you to forgive me, to save me. And the scripture says the moment that you believe that in your heart, regardless of the words of your mouth, that you become a follower of Jesus, you become a son and a daughter of God, and now your journey and relationship with Jesus can really begin. So I just want to encourage you as we close. If you are brand new in this journey of following Jesus, or if you have questions about faith, we want to help people take next steps, not just watch a service. So the thing that you can do right now is text CC Start to 94000. CC Start to 94000. And we want to invite you into a digital group called Starting Point that begins at the end of this month, April 30th. So if you text that, CC Start to 94000, we will send you a link, give you information about how to register, but we want to help you take a next step. We want to help you begin to get questions answered. And then last thing, some of you have made a decision right now, right here, a decision to surrender your fear, to deny yourself, and to really follow Jesus. Others of you, this was the moment for the first time that you've placed your faith and trust in Christ. And so if that's you, whatever your decision is, would you text right now, CC, I have decided. CC, I have decided to 94000. We're going to send you a link. We would love to know how God has spoken to you today, what decisions you've made, and then send you some information about that decision. Would you just pray with me as our worship team leads us out? Jesus, I thank you for what you're doing in this moment, all over the place, among people and in spaces that we'll never know about. But I thank you for the power of your word. I thank you that we stand in the line of people who have set an example and have paved the way for us even to be here today and talking about this. And so, Lord, I pray that maybe in the midst for some of us of faithlessness, that we'd be able to grab a hold of some of their faith and realize that the same God that led those first century Christians to be compassionate and fearless is the same God that we follow today. And I pray in this moment for many of us that we'd see in a new way what it means to follow Jesus. And so I pray this and ask this in Jesus' incredible name. Amen.
I'll raise a hallelujah in the presence of my enemies. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will rise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. I'm gonna sing in the middle of the storm. Louder and louder, you're gonna hear my praises roar. Up from the ashes, hope will rise. Death is defeated, the King is alive. Oh, I'll raise a hallelujah. 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 Amen. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Stick around. The after party's happening right now, y'all.
We are so glad you're joining us here today. Just real quick, a reminder that I'm just checking on Instagram. It's Justin's birthday.
It is my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Guess out of us which one's older.
Here, just scooch over a little bit because you're almost out of the shot.
No, this
In?
Towards me.
In? Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm all clean. I'm Lysol down.
You guys all down?
Yeah.
It's funny because I feel like everyone now, you're cleaning everything to make sure everything all fresh and clean. Everything. It's like you know how like when you have a baby and you clean the nursery and like you clean the whole house to make sure your house is really clean because the baby's coming home. Like everyone's house is cleaned like that all the time now.
I'm already bored.
You're already bored.
That story went way too long. Someone wake me up, please. Anyways, so glad you joined us. Make sure you drop in the comments. Happy birthday to Justin. Also, let's have your street address so they can send gift cards and your GoFundMe account. And I'm just joking. Now he's not even talking to me.
I'll talk to you all because you're great. It's funny. I like most of our staff.
Yeah.
Like
Sure.
almost all of them. There's one person I'm like struggling with sometimes.
Well, Jesus will help you.
Jesus will help me. He will help me.
Jesus will fill the gaps. He'll fill the gaps. Anyways, we have a fun after party scheduled for you today. Moving forward, we're going to do some cool things with our after parties where we're going to bring in different guests and different people for you to get to know. Because this is just an awesome opportunity.
Yeah.
Once we're all back together, we're always outside, but it's usually like a mad dash outside. So it's
Yeah.
hard for you to actually like talk to people and stuff.
Yes.
But I see your wife hanging out
My
over
wife
here.
is over here.
And I think it would be good for both of us if I stepped off for a second
Sure.
and had her come on.
Sure.
Because I think you like her way better than me anyways. So
Okay.
I'm going to just scooch to this chair and let her come on so you can talk to her a little bit about what Jesus did. And she can scoot closer to you.
She can
and
scoot. She can
I
get
can scooch in a little bit.
as close as she wants. We married.
Yeah. Here, do go that way.
Keep
Oh,
it close
yeah,
to her,
that's
though.
true. The microphone's as big
So
as you
those
are.
of you who don't know, it's my wife Rachel. She is our CC Kids Ministry Coordinator. So she oversees all CC Kids. Does a great job with that. You don't see her generally on Sundays because she's 4'11", first. Secondly,
Listen, you're already getting some happy birthdays.
thank you. I'm not
Cecilio, I think, right?
Cecilio.
Yes.
Cecilio. But so typically like you'll go to first service and then you're over there doing all the crazy. Because we typically we have 200, 225 kids a weekend. So, but right now, tell us Easter Jam, what went on for people who didn't watch it, how to get free pizza. Just tell us all about the kids ministry stuff.
All right, well, last week we had Easter Jam, and I just, huge shout out to everyone who was involved in that. We had, I'm not going to start listing names because there was a bunch of people, but
You'll forget names or say the names wrong. I've done that
Yeah.
so many times.
Yeah, I'll
Like,
miss one person,
yeah.
and then I'll be like, oh, I
Yeah.
forgot.
Don't worry.
So, but there were several people that put a bunch of time in helping prepare that, and then also like being on stage here, just being live. I mean, this was like they were really nervous. It was something new that they've never done before.
Yeah.
So they came thinking, oh, I got this, and then they were like, oh, this is like a big deal. They were nervous about it. So, but they
I feel like you didn't even see that though in the video.
no, they
No.
jumped right right up there and they did it. It was awesome. So
I
we
was
had a
so
good
impressed, like even with their, because so having kids like 7 and under, you watch all the kids shows, right? And so, and the big thing to do right now is like almost to have like the interactive, like adult slash like the cartoon sort of things. And I felt like their demeanor on stage and how they talked and their energy and everything matched what I would have seen
Yeah.
done professionally. Like I was really, really impressed with them.
Yeah,
So.
and I think the thing I was struck with is as they were leaving that night that we did the Easter Jam, they were like almost giddy. They just were so happy to be able to be here and be involved with CC Kids. And they said countless times, like, we miss the kids so much. Like, they just can't wait to be back with them. So
I love that.
It helps all of you, if you're on Facebook or Instagram, if you're doing stuff with your kids, you can tag CC Kids in it. Because then the reason it helps us and helps you is it gives us the ability to share stuff. And then their leaders can see it, the other kids can see it. Even today we're having leaders shouting out kids so they can hear from some small group leaders, which really helps bridge the gap.
Yes.
Well, and I think too, like, so for instance, like, Brooke has, she's had April Music as a small group leader, and then she's also had Jamie Thompson. And then Brooke just found out school is canceled, basically, not canceled, they still have to go to school, but they're not getting back in. Anyways, and so I worked out with Jamie that Brooke's gonna have a FaceTime with her at some point. So if you know some of your CC Kids small group leaders, or if you wanna DM CC, I'm sure like they can work out getting numbers and FaceTime and stuff and get you connected with some of the small group leaders. But the team that you guys have built, it speaks so much to your leadership, like the quality and the caliber of people that you've gotten involved, and how connected they are with the kids, and how invested they are with the kids. We've never had that before in the history of our church, and what you guys are doing is phenomenal. And tell the numbers in case people missed it. How many kids did we have watch Easter Jam this weekend?
I think we had 1,000.
Yes, you did.
Viewers for Easter Jam, which was
You
so
did.
cool.
And that's also, there's like and some of this can be like kind of boring, bogged down details, but like there's like impressions, and then there's like viewers.
Yes.
Like you can scroll through, and some of you did it. Like we've watched it probably 2 or 3 times, or just checked things out. Where like 2 or 3 views, it's not the actual. Like we had like thousands of people.
Thousands,
Like thousands of impressions, but really 1,000 people.
Yeah.
Like their IP address, individual, whatever data, whatever, which is cool because that's more kids than we've ever reached. There's kids like I know. Like our nieces and our niece and nephew in Ohio. I think you have family members in the state that people just watch it and have a good time with their kids.
Yeah.
Which is cool. And today, too, you can win free pizza.
Yes.
If you...
Yep, you tag at CC Kids FL. If you guys just doing CC Kids at home, doing the worship videos, watching the
Where can they
lesson.
find those?
So that'll all be on YouTube. If you just go on YouTube and search CC Kids FL, that will all come up. And then they're also posted on our Facebook page.
Yeah. So follow, if you search at CC Kids FL on Instagram or Facebook, you'll find their account. And they have till 4 p.m. today to post that, right?
We will do an announcement at, I think, 4:30.
And then how our kids do.
Yeah.
Really, that's what it
Real
is.
life, man.
We're honest, it's like, are the kids going to be quiet at 4?
Raise your hand if you need a vacation from your children.
Yeah.
Like, Lord have mercy
Social
this week.
distance
Yes.
From our kids.
I called my mom the other day and I was like, literally, I think it was like Thursday, Friday. I was like, literally, all I have done today is clean my house and yell at my kids. Like, I have been so good this entire time, and my breaking point was Thursday, and it wasn't just little yelling. Like, full disclosure, it was a lot of really loud yelling, some slamming of doors. It was all sorts of things.
You want to talk about that more?
Yeah, parent of the year.
Let's
We've got some more people in the wings.
people.
I don't want to rush. I don't want to rush our beautiful
Also, I want
Rachel.
you to know
Yes.
the pizza is not just for people locally. You could be anywhere because we
Oh.
can have pizza delivered from anywhere. So
I mean, we can deliver it to New Hampshire,
absolutely.
to
Texas? We have family in Texas that's doing it all the time.
Massachusetts. I mean, just wherever.
So-
Probably not like India. So we got some people from India on here,
Sorry.
but
Just stateside.
yeah, just in the States. Anyways, thanks,
Thanks,
Rachel.
guys. Bye.
Okay, now let's just, yep, there we go. Okay, so I need Mike and Trey and Samuel to come on up over here, and you're gonna have to try to separate yourselves as best as possible.
They're all
I know.
coming in here. Here, I can't.
They like, okay, there we go.
Come that way a little.
They're like hating me for this, just FYI.
Say these guys love talking and being on
Can you
camera.
get them all in?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so first, I'm
You
just
guys
trying
just
to.
come straight behind.
Yeah,
gotta be
there we
behind
go.
it. Just don't
We'll
put
lights
your
on
hands
that.
on
Don't
the
breathe
There
on
we
me.
go.
Don't breathe on us. All right.
This is weird, Sam. Yeah.
I know. Okay, so Mike, I referenced April, who has been pouring into my daughter for like years. But Mike and April, what is happening on Friday, Mike?
We are getting married.
Woo! All right, so send a little confetti blower things, or the clap things, or I don't know, send them. But anyways, how long have you guys been together?
Been dating for a little 4 years.
Get it done. All right, so Friday. Is it going to be like just a small little?
Yes, we kind of had to like make it smaller event, but we're
Yeah.
like, you know what, not today, Satan, we're getting married on the 24th.
That's it.
No matter what.
Yes.
So we're making it happen.
I love that. And then can we have a big party later?
Yes, we are. We're going to
Okay.
reschedule the reception.
Can I be invited?
Yeah.
Will there be
I'll
dancing?
put you on this. I won't dance, but you guys can
Okay,
have
that'd
that.
be great.
There you go.
And so mark it down. I'm going to that reception. Excellent. And then Sam, I'm so sorry, Sam, for this. Sam hates this stuff. But Sam is married to Grace, who is Brian's executive assistant. But I'm making Sam come on here because a lot of you have noticed. So in January, Jared, who is our music coordinator, excuse me, quiet on set, Brian, whoever you're talking to. Potentially, is that your wife he's talking to? I saw the white shoes.
If y'all remember
Seriously?
last week,
Sam can't have his moment.
you remember last week the Easter video, behind the scenes stuff? That was Grace for the Easter
Come here, Grace.
beginning video.
Make Sam feel better.
We can't fit that many people here though.
Well, she can sit right next to Sam because
I
they're
can get
married.
up and
Mike,
Mike's like, I'm
Mike's like,
fine.
I'm good. I can
Okay,
do
Mike,
that.
you want to go off?
Yeah.
You've had your moment. There we go.
Oh, I
So,
have to sit? I thought I
yes.
could just wave.
So Sam, so anyway, so Jared was on tour for a month, and Sam Sam's been with us for forever. I can tell you the story of how I snuck Sam in here, but Sam like was taken over for Jared's spot and has been shredding it. And a lot of you have been like making comments about it. So I actually wanted you to see him. So, and he was shredding it so much. I see the sweat on the shirt.
No, I made the mistake of eating a donut today.
Oh! It's so much cooler if you would have said you were sweating. That's all right. Okay.
Jared said he can't play one set without sweating. That's not the case.
I think it's
We're
funny because
lazy.
even today, it's like you and Mike are like the bookends, and it's like everyone in the middle is moving, doing things, and you and Mike are like,
But Sam can get down with his bad self. Like there are some songs where
yes.
when
You also
Sam starts moving.
check out Velocity Wednesday night at 8.
Yes.
Instagram Velocity Sam
Sam leads our
Faith.
velocity team.
and Grace has jumped on there like really good.
Yes. And then Trey. So we snagged Trey. How long have you been with us, Trey?
You make it sound like we're like stealing all these people
We
from
are.
other places.
We
She's
do.
a recruiter.
I find people with talent. And I'm like, come on. Okay, 8 months. Okay.
I started in late August.
And what's fun about Trey? Not right now. I mean, Trey's fun.
Curious to hear.
What is fun about Trey?
But you have a cover band that you usually
yeah.
play with. And a lot of times I see you guys at JF Kicks. Do you play other places, or is that your main place?
We play at Raccoons here in Brandon. We play at O'Brien's here in Brandon.
But not right now, Ops.
Not right now, obviously, yeah. We
But-
had a lot of gigs planned out, but they all got canceled.
That's so sucky.
What's your favorite cover song to play?
People always ask me that, and I don't know. I like to say Tennessee Whiskey, which is like, people wouldn't guess that
We
because
don't
it's really
talk about
slow.
alcohol. I'm
We
just
don't.
joking. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
But, that's a fun one because it's slow and it's, I don't know, it's a nice, easy jam. People are always dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
And you're also a photographer.
Yes, yeah.
So Trey has many talents. Trey, as we've been asking every week, are you single or are you with someone? Can we?
People are not going to come on if you keep asking. Any rejection letters from people.
Single at the moment, yeah.
Okay, single at the moment, ladies.
So he's free Friday. He's not getting married Friday, but
So you text I want to date Trey to 94000. I want to date Trey. So don't forget about Dusty and Faith from the past few
Dusty and
weeks.
Faith.
94000. All right, thanks you guys. You're like as fast as we can get off of here. Anyways, all right, babe, do you want to come on for a quick second?
I gotta tell you guys. Come on, man. Come on down here. I gotta tell you. I was sitting there listening to the message. And
What's up,
guys?
First of all, y'all need to like give your response to things. Nicole, if you're around back when we're all together, Nicole goes,
Yeah.
So I started counting them. If you
Are
had
you
to guess,
serious?
yes, I did. If you had to guess, how many did Nicole do in this message?
That is hilarious.
So how many times did she give I heard someone call it like a Baptist moo. But I wouldn't refer to it as that.
So that's encouraging that that's what you did.
Baptist move.
I was taking notes too.
That's cool.
But that's the first thing. So if you have a guess, how many did Nicole do? Guess, put those in. We'll hear those. But
Okay, I'm
also,
gonna look.
I was listening when you were talking about the Colosseum.
Were you listening though?
I was listening. I have
Okay.
notes. No, listen. The Colosseum, where you talked about how the gods of like the Greeks and Romans were like encouraged to go and kill in the Colosseum, and I told Rachel, I was like, just wait for this because this is gonna be good. And you talked about how Jesus encouraged people to go in and die in the Colosseum. I was like, oh my goodness, like it was good.
We took a break from counting.
I did take a break from counting, but then Nicole was like, I was like,
Back there.
That's how I have the scale. It's like more than 20 is like that's a good message.
20.
Under 20, I don't
What was
know.
that, more than 20?
20? Okay.
I know that would have been my guess. I thought it was a
I'm
20
not
message.
Aaron said
delay.
10 Baptist moves. Aaron, you better watch yourself. Don't you be calling me
Don't
a cow.
call it Baptist move though.
Come on now.
We won't call it that. It's
Have you ever heard that story though? Like, I forget who it is. They tell the story of like this friend was like new to their church, and like there was a legitimate question when they were going to lunch after church. They're like, why? Like, what is up with why do Christians moo? Like it was like a legitimate question. He's like, because I'm just sitting there and they're all like, And he's like, he didn't know what it was. It was a legitimate question. It was a real question.
This is where like when we all get back together. Like,
I just want you, before you go there, I want to let you know how many people have texted me at 94000. I'm just joking. But have texted me and said they miss hearing me. Would you stop?
I'm sorry.
Interact with the message.
Yeah, no,
they miss it.
That's what I was gonna say. Is for real. When you come back, Brian, Nicole, myself, when you're speaking and people respond, it's like, okay, this is making sense. This is hitting where you're at. But also, when you respond like that, it gives other people freedom.
Yeah.
Wow,
Well, legitimately, it was helpful.
So
today.
we have.
It's
There's
like
been
hundreds of empty chairs, so
10.
like hearing
I try to
something,
give like
it's like, well, I
that's
saw
good.
you were
10,
like counting the whole
14.
10, 14.
Okay, how many?
42.
No.
Yes.
I got you,
42.
baby. I was there with you.
It was a good message.
See,
It was
over
like,
20.
It's like
That's
those
the
are like
benchmark.
those are like
Moving
Yelp
for my
stars.
Yeah.
It's like, or like, remember Guitar Hero where you hit
So
many
if
streets
you
and
would go to our podcast and just
Moo.
rate how many moos and that would help us.
Move for the boo. That's what I was doing. I was moving for the boo.
see, now you turn it around.
Hashtag move for the boo.
Can I ask a question that I asked in the live thing? Because I'm just so.
Sure.
Hashtag move for the boo.
Who
we're
is excited
slowly going
about
downhill.
the Last Dance documentary tonight?
Babe, how excited
My God,
are
I'm
we?
so
What did
excited
we-
because I
what did we
mentioned
get?
it in the pre-service live. I mentioned it in. We just bought a new TV. We got a good deal on it, but like a big TV for our family room to watch this documentary tonight.
I thought
So,
you
we're
got it-
so any basketball fans out there,
documentary.
I am in an environment this morning like there's not a lot of sports fans here. Or even last night we were on a Zoom staff hangout and like I was counting. I think you might have been the only sports fan on the call on our whole staff, which
Your
means
dad.
we
Was your
hired
dad?
really badly. We
Well,
we
Dad-
missed
but
those
Dad's not
questions
that
in the
big
interview
into-
process,
Dad's not
and my
big into
dad. That's
But
right.
also,
Not as much
here's
as
the thing,
I
though.
am.
So we're playing this game, which if you're playing games like Zoom and stuff like this, Brad and Angela Parker host this. It was a really good game.
It was cool.
It was like a word and a blank, so you put out a
Can
word.
also
like,
get like inappropriate very quickly,
It
but
can
that's
get.
what makes it fun.
that sometimes. But it's like
Always.
it would be like bed, like blank bed. You have to guess
course.
whatever, right?
Like inappropriate, then you
the
start
one
with
where
bed.
it was guard, I thought for sure my friend Bryant, who's a basketball fan, is going to write point guard.
What did we put?
National
National Guard.
Which like we're thankful for the National Guard, like thank you
But
for your service. But the
It's
sports,
strategy though because you're trying to like who else is going to come up with this, so you got to get one person to come up with it, but not more
but
than
you
one.
way overthought
So you get the
could've
max
went-
amount of
you
points. So I
could've
did
went-
like I do everything. I overthought
but point guard
every
like,
question.
Well, and then
I
there was
know.
one that was like silent blank, and Brian's like killer, killer, and like this is because you might not know this about Brian, my husband, my lovely husband. You are so into 48-hour mysteries, Datelines. So Brian knows about several hundred ways to kill me and anyone else he doesn't like from watching.
That was good to know.
Just saying, don't get on his bad side.
I like
But-
mystery.
So that's why I thought for sure you'd like Tiger King. So we've started that whole scenario, and we might
So,
both need counseling as a
Shout
result
out
of
for
that.
Tiger
I haven't
King
seen
and
that
The
at all.
Last
I don't know.
Dance.
You haven't said you need
I
to.
don't know if I
You
want
need
to,
to
but
try.
it's-
You need to.
I don't know.
I would have not gotten into it if it wasn't for like this is all she's talking
But I needed to like have someone to discuss it with.
So Vine's like, I just need to watch it so I don't have to hear about it anymore.
Anyways.
So anyway, I'd love to know if you're watching Last Dance. I don't know why, but I just want to
man,
know.
I feel like I keep saying his name wrong.
Cecilio.
'Cause
Cecilio.
we can't meet with anybody, so
Hey,
normally I'd like invite
Cecilio,
people over.
Cecilio Giglio said, all the more reason to bring Pastors Talking Sports as a segment. I feel like you guys keep, look, the
We
plan
did
and
talk
everything's
about
right
that.
in my
We
face.
totally forgot.
I know, you guys keep
We-
promising it and it's not
We can
happening.
do it. We can do Instagram. We can do like a screen share.
Yeah.
Just can't.
But we can do that. But then it'd be only on Instagram. And we'd have
Yeah,
to
so
figure
we could do it
Or
on
we could
Instagram.
save it and put it on Facebook.
Can you do that?
Well,
think
you
so.
had said that, but
Okay. So I don't but we're gonna do that. We're gonna do
Yeah.
that
I would say also.
because I
Um,
want to talk sports.
Cecilia had sent something I was gonna think of. Oh, you could do is the Last Dance documentary. That's on ESPN.
Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say you could do Netflix watch parties on Netflix, but it's not.
It's not on Netflix, but it's a
It's on
10-part
is
series.
it on
They're
ESPN
releasing it
or
early.
ESPN Plus?
Who's
You
that?
need to get the-
That's LeBron James, the GOAT.
Whoa.
I'm just kidding. He's not.
Don't start
He's
there.
not. No. Favorite Jordan story. Favorite Jordan story
Oh, what?
is he was at camp. He was at a camp. His camp. He's hosting camp, right? If you don't know Michael Jordan, the famous actor from Space Jam. But see, he's at his
Not to be
acting
confused
camp.
with Michael B. Jordan,
Yes.
who's,
Who's also a famous actor.
yeah.
Might play basketball. No. So Michael Jordan, the basketball player, is having his camp for all his kids, and there's a kid there. What's his name? He's the best. At the time, he was the best player in high school, and he starts trash talking Michael Jordan, which is dumb. Like Jordan's the GOAT, and you're trash talking Jordan. So he said, I couldn't go where I wanted to go with it because all the kids were there. So he sent all the kids back to their cabins and kept that kid with some of his friends to play 5-on-5 pickup, and said, from this point on, it's a lesson. You might be the best player in high school. I'm the best player in the world.
I love him.
And like he said, we did not lose.
That's
I
such a
did
great line.
whatever I wanted to him. I
That's such a
posted. I'm like, I'm just like competitive. So I love stuff like that where it's like, sit
My
down.
favorite Jordan
Sit
story is
down.
when he was sick as a dog in the finals and then goes out, and how many points did he score?
This is after probably going a whole different direction.
I know. How many points did he score?
I forget.
This is Pastor talking sports.
But, okay,
Is the
one-
Michael
50.
Jordan one the documentary that's tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, The Last Dance is on ESPN, ESPN2. You'd think that I had a part in this film.
This
like,
after
not.
party is brought to you by
But-
ESPN.
I know.
The first two parts are tonight, starts at 9. I know this is ridiculous how excited I am about this, but I'm super excited. Because there's no sports.
Well, and
And I literally started advertising it. I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan, advertising this a year ago.
it was supposed to be in
And
June.
yeah, and it was supposed to not
Yeah.
release for a while, and then they moved it up. So like I've been waiting for this doc from
Well,
that year. But last
we
thing,
can have a
my
special
favorite
dinner
Larry
plan.
Bird story is when he's at the All-Star
Yes.
game and he was in a 3-point shootout contest. And so he goes in the locker room. He's like, "Which one of you is gonna finish second?" And then he walks out and he goes around. If you ever seen 3-point shooting contest, he gets to the last ball, puts it up, and then just walks away before he sees
Larry
it
Bird?
going in the net and wins the 3-point shooting contest. He's maybe the greatest trash talker of all time.
He would. Did you watch that Lakers Celtics
Yes.
documentary?
Yes.
Where he would documentary, man, I don't know, whatever. So he would tell guys what he's going to
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
Like, hey, just so you know, he's gonna pass the ball to me. I'm gonna do this and that. I'm gonna put it right in your face. And then he would do that.
He's a huge trash talker.
I
Like,
love him.
that's
and
what I wish
what I
they
love
could-
is he's such a goober. Like he's such a white, like old goobery looking man, and yet he was like incredible. Like
So just, I mean, like, because you're a white, old-looking man, you can't play
I'm
basketball.
just saying, my favorite things about watching sports documentaries, as you would call them, is
That's literally what they're called.
is documentaries. I don't know. Anyways, it's
I'm
like
saying
when
that
you see
correctly.
them like years and years later, and you would never peg them as playing sports. Like they're the oldest, like
Yes.
crustiest looking people in the
Well,
world.
that's what's
and
kind of
they were,
depressing.
Like,
Like all the guys that I like loved growing up are like 60 now. Like, gee.
But that's why I wish we could have, like, because
Wow.
you haven't, I mean, like, you had, like, Bird and Magic, you had, like, guys going against each other, but you didn't have, like, Kobe and Jordan in their prime.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have Kobe and LeBron in their prime. You didn't have Bird and Jordan. And, like,
oh, will you bring
they're-
up Kobe?
they're all, no, okay.
Rest in peace.
One of my favorite dad things, probably, this is like a mark of, like, me being a good dad.
handle this right now.
No, you'll handle that. Is my kids, my girls, Mayla who's 5, Lucy who's 4, when they take off their dirty clothes and they shoot it into the hamper, they say Kobe every time.
Oh, you gotta.
Kobe!
That's-
Kobe! They don't know what it means.
Yeah.
They call it a Kobe. I did a Kobe. I'm like, you made it, so you.
I started to use the Mamba mentality phrase go like that. That's really, that was.
Yeah. Sorry when they're young.
We've talked really
Yeah.
very little about the message and more about.
That's
movies
fine.
and
I don't know if anybody's watching, but this,
I
is,
know.
this has been the best conversation
You
I've
have
had in a
about 5 more
while.
minutes? 5 more minutes?
5 more minutes. I mean, is there interaction or are we boring people? Should we go ahead and shut it down?
Mostly on the basketball stuff.
Okay.
See, there you go.
I know. I just don't know. Do we have much? I don't want to drag it out.
No,
People
I
be
feel like
holy
we could
Moses."
cut it, you know? We
Yeah.
can cut it now.
I think it's better to leave you wanting
yeah,
more.
Any reminders that we need to share with anybody? Back
Parenting
tomorrow?
study is back on tomorrow.
Okay.
Yep.
11 o'clock?
11?
Sure.
Instagram and Facebook?
Yes. on the CC site. And then
And they can send their kids over for that, right? They drop their kids off at your house?
at my house for sure.
It's
yes.
at 30, what is your address?
Don't you give it out. No, keep your children, please. But yeah, tomorrow, 11 o'clock, parenting study, and then, let's see, noon prayer is Tuesday and Thursday.
Yep.
And then Wednesday, live worship at 7.
And velocity at 8.
Velocity at 8.
8 o'clock. Brand new series of Velocity. And this is huge, especially if you have students. We're starting a series that's all about, it's called IDK, and it's all about, like, so this week we're going to talk about,
It sounds so good.
so
It
good.
sounds
No,
so good.
We're just gonna leave
it there, just leave you hanging.
We're talking about pain and suffering. We're talking about religion and science. That's what we're talking about this week. It's religion and science.
Oh boy.
So how do those two
Get
things interact?
That's
We're also
good.
going to talk about Christianity and other religions. So if you have a student, even if you're
That's
not a
gonna be
student, you want to jump in, you can jump in and check it out, but definitely have your students come and watch CC.
And last week was really special.
Yeah.
A lot
Yeah,
of people
last week was
tuning in.
Yeah, last week was huge. Last week, I would say, last week was like powerful.
Yes.
Like it was like we were even singing a song, and it's like, and I'm not like a huge Pentecostal charismatic person. Like even like I'm pretty vanilla about a lot of things. But it was like Holy Spirit was like extra.
I love
It
that.
was. I mean, it was powerful.
You led that so well. I mean, I watched the majority of it, and it was just incredible.
Yeah,
it was
it was.
incredible.
Yeah. Honestly, even as a gathering, like this is where we talked about this earlier with worship through giving. So like we're meeting needs. Almost 850 pounds of food, which is huge. Which we can use more food and water, but also like meeting the needs in a large capacity, also meeting needs in a specific capacity. I feel like just being sensitive.
And that's what a lot of people don't know about. All the little things that are happening that are a lot organic, like people in a community group or a Zoom community group, and they hear about a need and they're meeting the need, and so there's so much of that happening. I would say this is keep a lookout this week, because I think there's even more things that we're going to be doing. As we keep hearing about needs from our partners, we're going to put them out there, so there's another 1 or 2 things that I think are hitting this week. And shout out to the Osprey Observer for giving us a shout out, us in the Crossing for all the work that all you guys are doing to bring in food. And so keep it coming, and just reminder about like all of your giving week in and week out helps that, because part of that giving goes to those partner organizations like Echo, like Family Promise, like Lighthouse Ministries, and on it goes. So your ability to keep giving is what keeps us being able to funnel money to these organizations, support our local churches like City Walk Church, about 1.5 years old. We're a big supporter of them out in California, so just encourage on that to keep
And the
keep
only
that
thing
coming.
I'd say is like just something small that you guys can do. So teachers are working their heinies off, and this has been really difficult on them to not be able to say goodbye to the kids. Like I'm gonna have a moment of tears. Like we didn't get a chance to like say goodbye to Ryder's VPK teachers, and they invested so much into him. But something that I did last week was I just hopped on Amazon, and if you just search food gift cards or whatever, and you have your teacher's email address, you can send a gift card right from Amazon to their email address. So I sent one to Mrs. Bethany and Mrs. Wickham, and just was like, thank you for everything you're doing. So that's just something super easy you can do to thank your teachers, because some of them are working literally around the clock right now. And I know this has been hard on a lot of us homeschooling from home, but just imagine where the teachers are at, and this is something they're called to, and their hearts are just hurting over that. So keep that in mind, something really simple you can do just to love on your teachers. So
I'd say even like keeping it simple, like just reaching out. I'd say this is something like we get to do as a church on movement. Like we can spread hope, and it doesn't mean that we're not afraid. It doesn't mean I love what you talked about, like uncertainty is unavoidable. Like there's a lot of uncertainty, but also we can choose to spread hope, and even something like that doesn't have to be a lot. Even I know a lot of us, like there's pay cuts, there's different income stuff happening with all this stuff with your job. But even a $5 gift card somewhere, it communicates a huge thing.
or just thank them, you know. And I was making a list today of people that I haven't seen or touched base with in a while that I'm going to text. So like as God brings people to your mind, and right now we'll probably do another mental illness Facebook Live here soon, because please keep people that you know that are struggling with depression or anxiety, mental illness, please reach out to them, because this thing is starting to wear on some of us with those things. And so just be mindful of your friends with mental illness, reaching out to them. All right, we just got the cutoff.
Let us know what you're encouraged by the message. We would like to know that. We'll see you next week for part 2. Pastors and sports coming this week, I'm pretty sure.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm down. All right.
Later.